Well, hello, everybody. It's Lee Bodette, your host of Test Drive on the YouTube channel. Been a radio broadcaster for over 40 years and a car enthusiast my entire life. With me is my co-host, Scott Nickerson from Sport Car USA. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks for having me again.
You're very, very welcome. This week, I thought it'd be kind of cool to check out the history of the Camaro because, as you know, it has had many changes over the years. The Camaro has the history of performance and design for more than 50 years. That's a long time.
Yep.
Now, aren't they getting rid of the Camaro again, though?
I guess pretty much all V8s are going to be going away soon.
I'm not sure what year that's happening. Is it 2024 or 2025?
The current Dodge Challenger that they just released, the 170, is the final run. They're calling it. So we're very close to the end.
We really are, and I think that nameplate is so successful throughout the years, has been so successful throughout the years that it will come back.
I think in some iteration.
But who knows what it'll be.
Right.
Will it be a four-cylinder Camaro? I hope
or
not.
An all-electric?
Obviously, everything's going all-electric, right?
Yep.
So, well, we've talked a lot about GM in the past, Scott, and covered some of the other wonderful creations that GM has created. I remember a few weeks back we talked about the Corvette and how it was GM's first jump into the performance car market. That was quite a story. Chevy wasn't the only one going to have one model performance car kicking around, however. And I guess that's kind of where the Camaro got started.
Yep.
Back in the 60s, Chevy was a dominant manufacturer of all kinds of vehicles outside of performance vehicles. Ford, who's always been a nemesis of GM, they put up some very strong competition. Either you're a Ford guy or you're a Chevy guy. Chevy guy or Ford guy, right?
Yeah, what about you, Lee?
I have strayed. I really have strayed. I grew up a Ford guy because my dad was such a Ford nut. And Mercury, of course, Mercury is part of Ford. Mercury was kind of like the luxury edition of Ford. Just like you have Chevy and Buick. All GM products right there, Chevy and Buick, but Buick was the more luxurious model of the GM manufacturer to put out there. So getting back to Ford, they were making all kinds of cars, and they were doing very well. Back in 65, Chevy really wanted to take over the industry, and they wanted to beat Ford in all categories. So there's that competition.
Steep competition, too.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Red Sox-Yankees.
Yeah, exactly.
Dodgers, Giants.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So that way, Chevy started to do, this is what they started to do. They introduced the Chevelle. I love the Chevelle. I really do. And they designed that Chevelle to compete with the Ford Falcon. I would say, again, being a Ford guy, I've got an old Mustang, 66 Mustang, but I've always craved a Chevelle would be number one. Number two would be an Olds 442.
You ever going to make either of those happen?
It's a possibility. Never say no with me, as you know.
Keep an eye out for
I've owned so many cars, it's ridiculous. Some that I shouldn't have bought and some that I shouldn't have gotten rid of, that's for sure.
Yep.
So, again, Chevelle trying to compete with the Ford Falcon. Ford Falcon, if you recall, that was the basis for the Mustang, really. The Falcon, the drivetrain, I believe, was the platform for the Mustang. But that goes back a little ways. They redesigned the Impala. This is Chevy, of course, and they offered both the Chevelle in an SS configuration. The SS configuration stood for Super Sport, if you didn't know that, and added performance stylings to the Impala and Chevelle. To me, the Impala was more of a family car.
Yeah, the Impala now, it's kind of interesting how the Impala started as what it was like a muscle car. Now the Impala is just like a regular sedan.
But you see a lot of Impalas like in Miami.
Yeah.
You know, bumping up and down.
Oh, yep.
Bouncing up and down. Sure, they love those Impalas in Miami in particular. So both the Impala and Chevelle, they outsold Ford in the small to mid-size category. Chevy sold over 1 million Impalas, and that set a brand new record.
That's a lot of cars.
That is a lot of cars, yeah. It outsold Ford in full-size, mid-size, and small car categories as well. So it seems like everything was right. Right? Well, Ford introduced the Mustang, as we get back to the Mustang in 64, and that added a whole new category to compete in.
Yeah, they kind of pulled the rug out from under Chevy. They're like, all right, we got him. We've beaten him in every category, and then Ford just made a new one.
And as most people know, it was the start of the pony car. The pony car was created. That's the Ford Mustang. And that set a whole new wave for the production. Chevy realized they no longer were beating Ford in all categories, which was very, very important to Chevy. We have to beat Ford. They had nothing to compete in the pony car category at all.
Right. I mean, it's smart by Ford. Like, oh, we're getting beaten every category, so just start up a new one, and you automatically, by default, are the winner.
I wonder how much pressure the engineers got at GM, because Ford beat them to the punch with the pony car. And Chevy's kind of like holding their hands open. Well, what are we going to do?
Right. They could only respond. They weren't really starting the trend.
I wonder if anybody got fired for it. It's like, how could you let this happen? Right? That very same year, a Chevy executive, his name was Simon Emil Bunky Knudsen. He's important. He has 4 different names there.
That's a name, yeah.
That is quite a name. He had the same people working on the Impala work on a new project. He got them all together, and Irv Ribicki and Henry Haga were assigned to Chevy's new secret project called Project XP836, or Panther. Panther, easy for you to say. Much easier to remember, that's for sure.
Yeah, Panther's a much better name.
And we're going to have a test at the end of this podcast. Right. We're going to ask you the name of the Chevy's new secret project, Panther, or is it XP836? And, of course, who got this started?
That was a big project that they were going to be undertaking, where they kind of prioritized their aggressive designs while trying to keep them sleek and streamlined.
Yeah, they wanted a wide wheelbase, too. And, of course, they wanted that sport car level performance. Now, the Mustang was not a real, at the time, 64.5, when Mustang first came out, that was just your basic sport car.
It wasn't the most aerodynamic looking thing.
No, it wasn't aerodynamic, and it wasn't fast until they came up with the 289, and then we started getting into the Mach 1s, and heaven knows GT 500, GT 350, the more recent ones, but Ford definitely did it right throughout the years, gaining that muscle car performance. So the name Panther, that didn't stick around for that final production. And in 1966, Chevy announced the all-new Camaro. We got back to the Camaro, Scott. It was born with a single purpose in mind, and that purpose was to dethrone the Mustang and give Chevy its first pony car of their own.
Well, hopefully they beat them out.
And that was extreme competition right there. Going right back to you're a Chevy guy, you're a Ford guy, either you're a Camaro guy or a Mustang guy, or gal, excuse me. But, yeah, that was pretty intense for many, many years. I don't think it's as intense now.
No,
I think kind of seem like they've gone their separate way almost.
Yeah. Well, and that's what they always say, that like competition breeds like a better product, right?
So. Right, exactly. I was just wondering where they got the Camaro name from. It originated from a French-English dictionary where the word Camaro is slang for friend, pal, camaraderie. So they went with this name to establish the camaraderie and connection between man and machine. There you have it. Back in 1967, the first Camaro hit the streets with a big bang. Came in a coupe or convertible. The new Camaro is kind of frightening to drive because there's so many blind spots.
Yeah, I know that we've taken a couple test drives in one of the newer generation Camaros or the one just prior, and I'm not the biggest fan of Camaros. I think like the roof line is really low, and they look all right from the outside, but when you're driving them, it's just like a little rocket ship that's hard to see out.
Yeah, it really is. My daughter, who lives in North Carolina, Stacy, she rented one, and she was in the Boston area, and she said, "Dad, it scared me to death because I couldn't see."
I would not want to drive a Camaro in Boston.
Not with 4, 5, 6 lanes.
No.
So a little scary there, but getting back to the 67 Camaro, they took the inspiration from the Impala and Chevelle when they designed the Camaro, and they turned it up a notch, let's say to an 11. They had the recessed grille and the innovative fender flares. Those were the key features of the Camaro. First Camaro came with a 6.5-liter V8, none of this V6 like the Corvette started out with.
I know, they learned.
And the SS Rally and Z28 packages were packages that you could obtain. So right away, Chevy's Camaro would go hand in hand with performance. And they really were thinking performance all the way, where I believe Ford was looking at, hey, let's just get a nice pony car out there that most people can afford, and it's not going to be too souped up at all with any of these fancy packages.
Right. And that's one advantage of kind of going second, if you will.
Yeah.
Is Chevy could see what Ford did, and they go, all right, we're going to do that, and then we're going to do a little more to kind of push past where they are.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't a copycat model because the Camaro is very distinctive looking, as is the Mustang, but distinctive in separate ways.
Yep.
They have their own niche, as they say. Ford knew that Chevy was trying to compete with them on the pony car front, and they were starting to feel the pressure. So what they did, they redesigned the Mustang to incorporate a bigger engine. Chevy, they were trying to play catch up again. They knew they had to make some major changes. So 3 years later, in 1970, the next Camaro was released. They called that the Gen 2 Camaro. It got wider, had a new headlight design, and a more sleek and faster-looking rear end, and a larger rear fender. Now, people refer to this version of the Camaro as the fish face Camaro. I never knew that.
Yep.
Fish face.
Yep. Yeah, the way that the front grille and everything was shaped. Yeah.
It was very polarizing. People either really liked it or they absolutely hated it. Chevy bounced back well, and the Camaro would finally outsell the Mustang, even if only by about 1,000 units, which is really peanuts, but they could say that, hey, we did it again.
That's a win.
The second generation Camaro would go through numerous facelifts and changes to the grille. That's what they really do. They don't go major league on some of these yearly changes. They'll just do some cosmetic changes, change the headlights up, change the taillights, the bumper, that kind of thing. So
anything they can do to kind of keep it on the same body or frame is always going to be beneficial.
I totally agree.
For production.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to ruin a good thing.
Right.
If they're already winning,
right,
why mess with it too much?
Right.
The 82 model year of the Camaro, that was the third generation. This was the first Camaro with fuel injection. So now it also had an automatic option in addition to the standard transmission. I prefer the standard, of course. The third gen was 500 pounds lighter than the Gen 2. The 1980s Camaro was very different from previous generations and looked like the quintessential 80s sport car. The Camaro was chosen to be the official race car for the IROC, or the International Race of Champions. After the Z28 was rebranded as the IROC Z, remember that well, Chevy released the 20th anniversary commemorative edition in 1987 and a 25th anniversary heritage edition in 1992.
Those anniversary editions always look so cool.
Yeah, and those are rare finds.
Oh, yeah.
If you find one, you better hang on to it.
And I've seen a couple of the IROC Z Camaros before, and they're pretty cool. We had a pace car.
Oh, yeah.
The Pontiac Trans Am. We had a pace car. So it's kind of cool when they do the incorporation with racing and they have them as pace cars and stuff.
Yeah, Scott's referring to Sport Car USA. We buy and sell muscle cars throughout the country. And I do remember that pace car was kind of beaten up.
Yeah, it was definitely used.
It was definitely a driver's car, and some would say maybe it shouldn't be on the road at all.
Yeah, it was a project car for somebody in Florida, I think.
Yeah, somebody grabbed it.
Yep.
Somebody grabbed it, and one happy camper. 1993, that was the release of the fourth generation Camaro, and it stayed on the original F-body platform. The fourth gen, it was very different from Gen 3. What GM did was they smoothed out a lot of the sharp muscle car corners it previously had. The body, you'll notice, was a lot more rounded, but was still offered in a coupe or convertible. In 1998, the 5.7-liter V8 LS1 engine, that was the first all-aluminum engine offered in a Camaro since 1969. The new LS1 would output 325 horsepower. The fourth-generation Camaro wouldn't last very long, however, as in 2002, the F-body Camaro stopped production. Chevy saw low sales numbers for these kinds of vehicles, and they absolutely nixed/killed the project.
Yeah, there's a big following for those F-body frame vehicles because if I'm not mistaken, other cars besides the Camaro are on F-body platforms. So the Chevy Camaro and the Pontiac Firebird of that time were both on F-body platforms. So we posted a video of one of our Trans Am Firebirds on Instagram, and a page reshared it, and they're all about F-bodies. So I've got those older style Camaros and the Trans Ams.
And when we bring back the Ford versus Chevy versus Ford competition, Ford owners are like glowing, saying that, hey, the Mustang never stopped production. The Mustang has been consistent since day one. Had a little hiccup in the 70s when they went to the Mustang 2 because of the energy crisis, but they still had a Mustang, and Camaro absolutely stopped production for about 8 years.
Yep.
It didn't come back until 2010.
That's a pretty big hiatus.
Yeah. Now, in 2010, they came up with a few different packages that you could buy. I had a 2010 Bumblebee Camaro, and I bought it from Sport Car USA. It only had like 7,000 miles on it. This was just a few years ago. It was the Bumblebee. I never knew about that because I never watched Transformers. So a lot of people refer to me as the Bumblebee driver out there. It was a nice car, but again, with the blind spots, it wasn't the best as far as maneuvering lane to lane.
Yeah, that was my earliest memory of a Camaro.
Yeah.
Obviously, they came back. I was a baby when they stopped production, basically, the first time. But when they came back with all the Transformers movies, that was huge. That was such a great thing for Camaro to do.
And I love the looks of that car.
Yeah.
I'm a big yellow car guy.
Yep.
I had a yellow Corvette, had the yellow Camaro, and it just looked really sharp with the stripes all the way down the body.
Yep. Had the black stripes.
Yeah, from the hood to the trunk area. Very, very sharp. Enjoyed that car a lot. So what happened was the 5th generation Camaro, it had an all-new chassis and suspension platform. Again, this is after an 8-year hiatus. The 2010 Camaro SS, mine was an SS. It also had 100 more horsepower than its biggest competition, which was the Mustang GT.
That's a win.
So, that's a win for Chevy for sure. After 8 years, they come back and they beat the Mustang GT with horsepower.
I would hope so. They have 8 years to work on it.
Yeah,
8 years to think about what they're going to do.
That's why I think it's going to come back again. I really do, once they get rid of the current edition of the Camaro, which is pretty darn sharp. Then there was the 5th generation Camaro that produced about 426 horsepower through the LS3 V8 engine. It was lighter and more agile than the Mustang. The Camaro was back and vaulted itself toward the top of the muscle car food chain. 2010, they introduced the 5th gen Camaro. In 2013, brought the reintroduction of the Z28, as we talked about earlier. Z28 was back to being a performance beast and pumped out 505 horsepower. Not bad. This generation of Camaro would be very competitive in the muscle car market for sure. May 2016, the 6th generation Camaro was released. The first offerings of the 6th gen were the LT and SS trim. I just love the SS trim level, and I love just the badging.
Yeah, it does look really sharp.
It's very simple. SS, but it just, Chevelle, SS.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've had it for a long time. So that's one thing that they've stayed true to their roots on.
They really have, and I like it a lot. More trim levels and additional features would be added as the years would go on. And in 2016, the 6th generation Camaro won the 2016 Motor Trend Car of the Year award. That's big doings right there. Motor Trend is very well respected. I've watched the Motor Trend network for many, many years. That's pretty impressive for a car that just had a major overhaul and a redesign. That car, the 6th generation Camaro, weighed 200 pounds less and was architecturally over 70% unique from all GM vehicles. 2017, Camaro would earn a 50th anniversary edition. That 50th anniversary edition had some unique badging and interior touches to show off the lifespan of the Camaro. Chevy didn't stop leveling up their performance with the 2018 ZL1, and that had 615 horsepower and was a few hundred pounds lighter than the standard SS. Seems like Chevy kept getting lighter. Each generation, they would lighten the load a little bit with their vehicles.
Yeah, I guess if you hit kind of a limit or a plateau with adding power, then the next best way to make it faster is lighten the load.
Yeah. So Chevy Camaro, just an iconic automobile throughout the years. Again, kind of sorry to see it go in the next year or two, I guess. We'll have to find out when that date is going to be.
I don't know if they've announced an official end for Camaro, but definitely other manufacturers are starting to phase out those big V8s. So
But we have heard that it's going bye-bye.
Yep.
Yeah. But with that name, I just think it's going to come back one of these days. So, Scott, anything you'd like to add about the Camaro with our podcast today?
I don't believe so. I know that in the last few years, I've been able to see some of those ZL1 Camaros, and they are super, super special. I'm not a big Camaro guy, but those you have to respect. They're a track vehicle.
They really are, and the new ones are just as sharp, I believe, than the older ones, because we've got a Chevy store located near us, and whenever I hear one go by, I have to stop what I'm doing and take a look.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very sharp, no question about it. We want to thank you, Scott Nickerson from Sport Car USA, for being with us today. And also, we want to remind you that Sport Car USA does, in fact, buy and sell sport cars, muscle cars in particular, modern muscle, throughout the country. So if you have a vehicle for sale, let us know. If you're looking for a vehicle, then we will probably have it, or we can find it for you. I'm Lee Bodette. Thanks for listening. Check out our test drive series on YouTube, and we'll see you next time on our Test Drive podcast. And remember, let's never forget the men and women serving this great country of ours. Goodbye, everybody.